And other times, recessions are caused by unpredictable events that lead to severe disruptions. Economists call these events black swans.
These are the things that, unfortunately, we cannot manage. You cannot control geopolitical events. You cannot control, COVID-19. But when they do happen, usually they're fast and furious and have an immediate impact. And that's what drove us into a very quick recession throughout COVID and others that we've seen through the course of time.
The US has experienced at least 30 recessions throughout history, dating back as early as 1857. They may have become an inevitable part of the economic cycle that fluctuates between periods of expansion and contraction.
History teaches us that recessions are inevitable.
I do think recessions are part of our business cycle. Do I believe that they're completely inevitable in a capitalistic society? Partly. There's so many events and external factors that contribute to recessions, such as supply shocks, demand shocks, geopolitical issues that come about.
It's part of human psychology to get too excited about things. And when you get too excited about things, you ultimately have asset bubbles, and those ultimately lead to recessions. It's also part of human nature that people will continue expanding their firms and businesses as long as the economy is good. And as long as that keeps happening, you'll eventually overheat, which eventually will lead to a recession.
Nonetheless, certain measures can be taken to make recessions less likely. As the nation's authority on monetary policies, the Federal Reserve plays a critical role in managing recessions.
With the right monetary policies, the Fed can prevent a recession. It's just very difficult to do so.
There are two things that the Fed can do to avoid a recession. One is to steer the economy so we don't get so much inflation that they have to slam on the brakes. The second is to pay close attention to the financial system so we don't have a repeat like the 2007, 8, and 9 recession, which was caused by too much lending, too many mortgages, and too much careless securitization on the part of Wall Street.
The Fed has often attempted to avoid a recession by engineering what's known as a soft landing. This is where precise interest rate hikes are used to curb inflation without pushing the economy into recession. But a successful soft landing is extremely rare, arguably achieved just once in 1994.
So what they're trying to do is raise rates enough so demand slows, so that it's really a tough needle that they're trying to thread to get our economy in equilibrium.
Now, the question is there an amount of pressure that they can apply onto the brakes that's enough to control inflation, but not enough to crash the economy? And the truth is that that's really, really difficult to get into that really, really narrow zone. It's the difference between trying to land an airplane in a really wide, spacious, open field versus trying to land an airplane on a very, very narrow piece of land with rocks and water on either side.
Some experts argue that policies have a clear limitation on what they can achieve against an impending downturn.
Policy tends to operate with long lags. I also think that increasingly we live in a global economy where the cross currents that are impacting, the economic dynamics are very complex. These are dynamics that the Fed doesn't have tools to address. And so, to a certain extent, we do think that policymakers, have certainly developed more tools to fight recessions, but we don't think that you can, rely on policymakers to prevent recessions.